The vacuum of space folded around the research vessel like a shroud of infinite darkness. Distant starlight glinted off the ship's crystalline hull, a fragile beacon of scientific exploration adrift in the Orient frontier. Inside, the vessel hummed with the quiet intensity of research in progress. Delicate instruments measuring the subtle rhythms of cosmic phenomena that most species would never comprehend. Zarael adjusted the microscopic calibration on her quantum resonance scanner, her translucent fingers moving with practiced precision. The luminary researcher had spent cycles studying the rare quantum fluctuations at the edge of known space, her dedication burning brighter than the distant stars outside. Her current project promised to unlock mysteries that could revolutionize understanding of interstellar particle interactions. A sudden tremor rippled through the ship's structure. Micro-vibrations danced across her instrument panel, transforming from a gentle hum to an aggressive warning sequence. Zorael's large, iridescent eyes widened as the ship's threat detection system erupted into a cascading alarm of crimson and silver warnings. Proximity breach detected, the ship's artificial intelligence announced in a calm, almost detached tone. Multiple unregistered vessels approaching. Defensive systems powering to minimal capacity. The research team around her began to move with a mix of scientific curiosity and mounting fear. Luminary were not a warrior species. Their strength had always been in observation, in understanding, in the delicate art of knowledge acquisition. Their vessels were designed for exploration, not conflict. 3 massive silhouettes materialized against the starfield. Dark, angular ships with razor-sharp outlines that spoke of pure predatory design. Krultheri raiders, a species notorious for their ruthless pursuit of resources and complete disregard for scientific missions. Shields failing, the AI continued, its clinical tone a stark contrast to the growing panic. Hull integrity compromised in sectors 3 through 7. Zorael's colleagues began emergency protocols. Some gathered critical research data, others moved toward emergency evacuation points. But they all knew the truth. Against Krultheri raiders, evacuation was more a ritual of hope than a genuine strategy of survival. The first breach came with a sound that seemed to tear reality itself. Molecular cutters sliced through the ship's outer hull, creating perfectly geometric openings. Armored figures began to pour through. Muscular, cybernetically enhanced warriors with multiple sets of arms and integrated weapon systems. Research team, prepare for potential capture protocols, the AI instructed. But capture was not the Krultheri's typical approach. They were known for complete elimination, for leaving no witnesses to their resource acquisitions. Zorael clutched her primary research module, years of work compressed into a crystalline data core. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the scientific determination that defined her species. If these were to be her final moments, she would ensure the research survived. The ship's internal defense systems proved laughably inadequate. Luminary technology emphasized non-violent solutions, precision measurement, and peaceful exploration. Against the Krultheri's military-grade systems, their defensive protocols were like tissue paper against a plasma cutter. One by one, her colleagues were systematically neutralized. Not killed, precisely, but rendered unconscious with clinical efficiency. The raiders moved with a choreographed precision that suggested countless similar operations. Zorael found herself cornered in the primary research bay. Her back pressed against a quantum analysis chamber, her only protection the slim hope that the advanced scientific equipment might provide some momentary shield. 3 Krultheri warriors approached, their weapon systems charged and ready. Their translator units clicked and whirred, preparing to extract any valuable information before completing their mission. In that moment of absolute vulnerability, something unexpected appeared on the ship's external sensors. A new signature cut through the darkness, a vessel that didn't match any known configuration in the Luminary database. Its approach was unconventional, its energy signature unlike anything the research team had ever encountered. The moment stretched. Zorael held her breath. The Krultheri paused, their sensors suddenly confused by the new arrival. Salvation approached from the infinite blackness of space. Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez's hands moved with practiced precision across the scout ship's control interface. Each movement was a calculated dance, years of military training and deep space exploration, distilled into fluid motions that seemed to anticipate the chaos around him. The scout ship was unlike anything in standard military catalogs. Retrofitted beyond recognition, it bore the marks of countless modifications, each upgrade a testament to Marcus's ability to transform limitations into opportunities. Its hull bore subtle scars from previous encounters, each patch and reinforcement telling a story of survival and adaptive engineering. External sensors screamed a complex symphony of incoming threat data. The Kreltheri raiders had not anticipated an intervention, their attack vector suggesting absolute confidence in their superiority. Marcus saw it differently. Where they perceived weakness, he identified opportunity. Tactical assessment. He murmured to the ship's integrated AI, a custom system he had personally developed over years of deep space missions. The holographic display flickered to life, displaying multiple threat scenarios with probability matrices dancing across translucent screens. The first response came not as a direct attack, but as a series of calculated disruptions. Marcus deployed electronic countermeasures that seemed to bend the very fabric of communication bands. Kreltheri weapon systems found themselves momentarily confused, their targeting mechanisms flickering between multiple false signatures. Target separation protocol. Marcus instructed the AI. His voice remained calm, almost conversational, a stark contrast to the intense combat unfolding around the damaged luminary research vessel. Missile clusters detached from the scout ship's hull, moving in patterns that defied conventional warfare algorithms. Each projectile carried multiple engagement protocols, some designed to disable, others to distract, a few prepared for direct confrontation. It was warfare as an intricate form of three-dimensional chess. The first Kreltheri raider found its primary power systems systematically dismantled, not destroyed, which would trigger automatic retaliatory protocols, but carefully neutralized. Marcus understood the psychology of technological warfare. Complete destruction often created more problems than solutions. Outside the ship's reinforced viewports, space itself seemed to become a canvas of strategic interaction. Energy discharges created momentary light shows, each burst a complex language of technological communication. The Kreltheri were accustomed to overwhelming their targets. They had never encountered a response quite like this. Marcus's scout ship moved with a fluidity that defied its apparent mass. Quantum stabilization systems, a technology most military branches considered experimental, allowed for movement patterns that seemed to bend the traditional laws of space engagement. Where a standard vessel would require massive energy expenditures for similar maneuvers, his ship seemed to slip between spatial constraints with minimal effort. Primary target neutralized, the AI reported. Its voice carried a subtle undertone that Marcus had programmed, not quite emotion, but a hint of collaborative intent. Two remaining Kreltheri raiders adjusted their attack vectors. Their communication channels buzzed with confusion and emerging threat assessments. Marcus represented something entirely outside their strategic databases, a human who fought not with brute force, but with an almost artistic approach to conflict resolution. Another series of targeted disruptions. This time, Marcus focused on the raiders' communication networks. Sophisticated viral algorithms infiltrated their systems, not to destroy, but to create controlled confusion. Navigation systems received conflicting data. Weapon calibration became incrementally misaligned. The second raider found its primary weapon systems slowly rotating away from their intended targets, controlled by an external influence it could not immediately comprehend. It was psychological warfare at the technological level, a demonstration of capability that went beyond simple destruction. Hostile vessel retreating, the AI announced. But Marcus knew retreat was a complex concept in deep space engagements. His fingers danced across additional control interfaces. Defensive protocols activated, creating a protective bubble around the damaged luminary research vessel. It was more than a military action. It was a statement of intent. The final Krell-Theory raider attempted a desperate long-range attack. Marcus's response was instantaneous. A targeted electromagnetic pulse that didn't destroy the vessel but created a cascading system reset. Within moments, the raider was effectively a dormant piece of technology, adrift and neutralized. Silence returned to the section of space, where moments before chaos had reigned. Now only the subtle hum of ship systems remained. Marcus took a measured breath, reviewing the engagement data. Mission parameters, he spoke softly. Protect the vulnerable. Neutralize without unnecessary destruction. Outside the viewport, the damaged luminary research vessel drifted, saved, but perhaps not yet understanding the nature of its salvation. The airlock cycled with a gentle hiss, a sound that seemed almost apologetic given the recent violence. Marcus Rodriguez moved with a deliberate, calculated grace that spoke of years of training and adaptation. His environmental suit was nothing like the standard-issue equipment most military personnel used. Custom-fitted and bristling with improvised modifications, it looked more like a living system than protective gear. Luminary crew members pressed themselves against the corridor walls, their translucent skin shifting through shades of pale blue and silver, a biological response to stress and uncertainty. They had witnessed countless scientific expeditions, encountered numerous species, but nothing quite prepared them for this moment. Marcus's first action surprised everyone. Instead of securing the area or demanding information, he knelt beside a fallen research assistant whose environmental suit showed signs of stress damage. His hands moved with a surgeon's precision, accessing a compact medical kit that seemed to contain solutions for problems most medical systems hadn't even anticipated. Micro-seal breaches detected, he murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. A series of nanite-infused patches emerged from his kit, each designed to create a temporary but effective seal on damaged environmental protection systems. The injured luminary researcher blinked in confusion. Most species would have called for extensive medical evacuation. Marcus was solving the problem directly, efficiently, with resources at hand. Zaral watched from a nearby sensor station, her scientific mind working overtime. The human moved differently from any species she had studied. Each action seemed to be a complex calculation, not just of immediate needs, but of potential future complications. Primary systems stabilization required. Marcus spoke to the ship's integrated emergency protocols, but his approach was nothing like the clinical commands of standard rescue operations. He spoke as if the ship were a living entity, something to be understood rather than simply repaired. Luminary engineering was based on precision and theoretical perfection. Human repair work, by contrast, looked almost chaotic. Marcus used tools in ways they were never intended to be used. A communication relay component became a structural support. A quantum calibration device was repurposed to stabilize a damaged power conduit. "This is impossible," whispered a senior research coordinator. His translator unit struggled to process the rapid sequence of repairs Marcus was implementing. Zaral found herself stepping forward. Scientific curiosity overrode her initial fear. "How are you accomplishing this?" she asked, her translator rendering the question in a mix of professional curiosity and genuine wonder. Marcus paused, a small diagnostic tool halfway through rerouting the complex energy system. His smile was neither condescending nor triumphant. It was the expression of someone who saw problem-solving as the most natural thing in the universe. "Adaptation is survival," he explained, his words carrying a depth that transcended simple translation. "Every problem is just an opportunity waiting for the right perspective." The ship around them seemed to respond to his touch. Systems that had been critically damaged began to stabilize. The luminary crew watched in a mixture of terror and fascination as their advanced technological marvel was brought back to functionality through what could only be described as organized improvisation. One of the junior researchers dropped a delicate scientific instrument. Before anyone could react, Marcus caught it mid-fall, his reflexes defying the typical response time of biological systems. The device was not just saved, His quick catch prevented a cascading failure that would have destroyed weeks of research. Zarail's scientific instruments began recording everything. Every movement, every repair technique, every unconventional solution became data. The human before her was rewriting everything she understood about technological intervention and species capabilities. "Your systems are incredible," Marcus said to the ship itself, his hand pressed against a damaged communication panel. "You've survived far worse than this." The Luminary had always seen their technology as perfect, their scientific approach as the pinnacle of rational problem-solving. Marcus demonstrated something entirely different, a philosophy of adaptation that saw challenges as puzzles to be solved with whatever resources were available. As emergency systems slowly returned to full functionality, the Luminary crew began to realize something profound. This wasn't just a rescue. This was a fundamental challenge to everything they understood about technological capability, species interaction, and the nature of problem-solving itself. Zarail watched Marcus work, her scientific mind racing with questions, possibilities, and a growing sense that everything she knew was about to change. The ship's emergency conference room hummed with a tension that transcended species and cultural boundaries. Marcus Rodriguez sat at the center of a semicircle of Luminary researchers, his posture relaxed yet alert, a contradiction that seemed to define his entire approach to existence. Zarail had positioned herself closest to him, her scientific instruments carefully calibrated to capture every nuance of the human's communication. The other Luminary researchers maintained a careful distance, their translucent skin shifting through subtle colors that betrayed their mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Tell us about your world," she requested, her translator rendering the words with a precise combination of academic inquiry and personal fascination. Marcus's laugh was unexpected. It wasn't a sound of mockery or dismissal, but something more complex, a genuine expression of the complexity of human experience. "Earth isn't a simple story," he began. "We're a species of contradictions." He pulled up a holographic display, not through advanced Luminary technology, but through a compact device that seemed cobbled together from multiple technological sources. Images flickered to life, scenes of human history that defied simple categorization. A sprawling metropolis gave way to images of pristine wilderness, scenes of technological marvel transformed into moments of profound artistic expression. Marcus wasn't just showing images, he was telling a story of adaptation, of a species that had learned to survive by constantly reimagining its own potential. "We nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times," Marcus explained, his fingers tracing through images of conflict and reconstruction. "Climate challenges, technological disruptions, social transformations. Each time, we found a way to adapt." The Luminary researchers leaned forward. Their own historical records were precise, clinical, a carefully documented progression of scientific achievement. Human history appeared chaotic, almost organic in its unpredictability. An image of early space exploration appeared, primitive vessels breaking free from Earth's gravitational pull. "We didn't wait for perfect technology," Marcus continued. "We worked with what we had, modified constantly, learned from every failure." Zarail's instruments captured something remarkable. Marcus's heart rate, his micro-expressions, the subtle variations in his verbal communication, all suggested he was doing more than presenting information. He was sharing a philosophy, a way of understanding existence. "Your species seems unpredictable," commented the senior research coordinator, his translator rendering the words with a mix of caution and fascination. Marcus smiled. "Unpredictability is our greatest strength. We don't see obstacles, we see opportunities for creative solutions." To demonstrate, he began dismantling a complex Luminary scientific instrument. The researchers tensed, expecting destruction. Instead, Marcus rapidly reconfigured the device, using components in ways they had never conceived. Within moments, the instrument functioned differently, not necessarily better by Luminary standards, but with a remarkable adaptability. "We learn by doing," he explained. "Theoretical perfection is less important than practical adaptation." The stories continued. Marcus spoke of human migrations, of cultures that had transformed through constant interaction and challenge. He explained how humanity's greatest achievements often emerged from moments of apparent weakness, how limitation had been transformed into innovation. Zaral's research focus shifted with each moment. This wasn't just an interview. This was a fundamental revaluation of everything she understood about intelligent species and technological development. Your approach to knowledge is almost organic, she observed, her translator struggling to capture the full complexity of her insight. Marcus nodded. We don't see knowledge as a fixed state. It's a living system, constantly evolving, constantly adapting. The luminary researchers exchanged glances. Their entire scientific methodology was based on precise, incremental understanding. Marcus presented knowledge as a dynamic, almost living entity, something to be explored rather than simply documented. As the conversation continued, the initial fear and uncertainty began to transform. The luminary were witnessing something profound, a species that had survived not through technological superiority, but through an almost philosophical approach to existence itself. Zaral realized they were experiencing more than a cultural exchange. This was a fundamental challenge to everything they understood about intelligence, adaptation, and the nature of technological progress. The conference room continued to hum, a quiet witness to a moment of potentially galactic significance. The ship's sensor array erupted with a cascade of warning signals. Crimson alerts danced across holographic displays, signaling the approach of secondary Kreltheri patrol vessels, where most crews would descend into panic. The combined human and luminary team found themselves transforming chaos into an opportunity for collaborative survival. Marcus Rodriguez moved with a fluidity that defied traditional combat protocols. His hands danced across multiple control interfaces, simultaneously managing ship systems, defensive strategies, and communication channels. The luminary researchers watched in collective amazement as he began to integrate their advanced scientific equipment into an unconventional defensive network. Sensor recalibration. He called out to Zaral, "Can you modify your quantum resonance scanner to create a multi-layered interference pattern?" Zaral didn't hesitate. Her fingers moved across her primary research console, transforming a delicate scientific instrument into a sophisticated electronic warfare tool. The quantum scanner began to emit complex energy signatures that would confuse and misdirect incoming targeting systems. The senior research coordinator looked horrified. "You're repurposing precision scientific equipment as a weapon." Marcus's response was calm. "In survival, everything is a potential solution. Your scientific tools are extensions of problem solving. We're simply expanding the definition of problem." Incoming Kreltheri vessels began their attack run. Their weapon systems represented the pinnacle of aggressive technological design. Precise, ruthless, engineered for complete elimination. But they had never encountered a response quite like this. A junior luminary technician found himself pulled into the defense strategy. Marcus guided his hands to a communication relay system, showing him how to create cascading signal disruptions that would make the incoming ship's targeting systems struggle to maintain a consistent lock. "Watch the pattern," Marcus explained. "It's not about blocking. It's about creating uncertainty." The ship around them became a living system of adaptation. Luminary scientific equipment merged with Marcus's improvised defensive technologies. Energy conduits designed for research became channels of electronic countermeasures. Precision calibration tools transformed into targeted interference generators. Zaral's research instruments began collecting unprecedented data. This wasn't just a defensive action. It was a complex dance of technological interaction that defied traditional combat documentation. "Incoming missile vectors detected," the ship's AI announced. But its tone suggested more curiosity than alarm. Marcus moved with a choreographed precision that seemed to anticipate the attack before it fully materialized. Where standard military doctrine would suggest direct confrontation, He was creating a multilayered response that was more about redirection than destruction. The first Krell-Theory missile found itself guided away from its primary target through a complex series of quantum interference patterns. It wasn't destroyed. It was fundamentally confused about its own trajectory. "Fascinating," Zor-El murmured, her instruments capturing every moment of the unprecedented interaction. The Luminary crew found themselves transformed from passive observers to active participants. Marcus wasn't just defending them. He was teaching them a fundamentally different approach to confrontation. Each defensive action became a learning opportunity, each moment a chance to understand a new perspective on survival. A second wave of attacks approached, but where the first had been predictable, this one carried more complexity. The Krell-Theory were adapting, learning from their initial failed approach. Marcus smiled. Now it gets interesting. The ship's internal systems began to pulse with a rhythm that seemed almost organic. Scientific equipment, defensive systems, communication arrays, all merged into a single complex network of response and adaptation. The Luminary research vessel was no longer just a target. It had become a living system of technological interaction, a demonstration of how collaboration could transform potential destruction into an opportunity for understanding. Zor-El realized they were witnessing something more profound than a simple space battle. This was a philosophical confrontation, a demonstration of how different approaches to challenge could fundamentally reshape potential outcomes. As the Krell-Theory vessels continued their attack run, the combined human and Luminary team prepared for a response that would challenge everything these raiders understood about conflict and survival. The stars outside seemed to pause, watching this unexpected dance of technological adaptation unfold. The Luminary Senate chamber gleamed with an ethereal light, its crystalline walls reflecting the complex holographic displays that surrounded Marcus Rodriguez. This was no ordinary hearing. This was a moment that would potentially reshape galactic understanding of human capabilities. Zor-El stood as the primary witness, her research documentation filling massive data repositories. Her preliminary report had already created unprecedented waves within Luminary scientific and diplomatic circles. What had begun as a routine research mission had transformed into a case study of interspecies interaction that defied all previous models. Lieutenant Rodriguez began the senior consul, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of diplomatic protocol. "Your intervention challenges everything in our current understanding of strategic engagement." Marcus remained seated, his posture relaxed yet respectful. Unlike most species presenting before a galactic senate, he showed no signs of intimidation. His hands were clasped loosely, his breathing steady, a living demonstration of the human capacity for calm under pressure. The holographic displays began to reconstruct the entire encounter. Detailed sensor logs, communication intercepts, and tactical analysis painted a comprehensive picture of the rescue. Each moment was examined with microscopic precision, revealing layers of complexity that went far beyond a simple defensive action. Zor-El stepped forward, her research presentation a masterpiece of scientific documentation. "The human approach to problem solving," she explained, "is fundamentally different from our previous understanding. What we perceived as chaos is actually a highly sophisticated adaptive strategy." Her presentation showed multiple instances where Marcus had transformed limitations into opportunities, scientific equipment repurposed as defensive tools, communication systems twisted into complex interference networks. Each slide challenged the Luminary's long-held assumptions about technological interaction and conflict resolution. The senior research coordinator, who had initially been skeptical, now looked almost mesmerized. The documentation showed something profound. A species that saw technological systems not as fixed entities, but as living, adaptable networks. "Your report suggests," one of the Senate members interrupted, "that human intervention represents more than a military capability. You're proposing it's a philosophical approach to existence." Zor-El nodded. "Precisely. The rescue was not just about physical protection. It was a demonstration of a fundamental approach to challenge and adaptation. Marcus remained silent, allowing the scientific documentation to speak for itself. This was a strategic choice, demonstrating that human communication went beyond words, extending into actions and systematic thinking. The Senate chamber began to show signs of internal debate. Luminari were not a confrontational species. Their approach to diplomatic challenges had always been based on precise, non-interventionist strategies. Marcus represented something entirely different, a proactive approach that saw potential threats as opportunities for understanding. Communication logs were displayed, showing how Marcus had interacted with the Luminari crew during the crisis. Each interaction was marked by a combination of technical problem-solving and genuine empathy. He didn't just protect, he collaborated, taught, and transformed the very nature of the encounter. The most remarkable aspect, Zoral continued, is the human capacity to view challenges as interconnected systems rather than isolated incidents. Diplomatic representatives from various luminary sectors began to discuss the implications. If one human could demonstrate such a complex approach to survival and interaction, what did that suggest about the entire human species? The hearing transformed from a simple mission review into something far more significant. This was becoming a pivotal moment in galactic diplomatic understanding. Marcus finally spoke, his words carefully chosen. "We don't see obstacles. We see opportunities for collective problem-solving." The simple statement carried more weight than hours of complex testimony. It was a philosophy, a way of approaching existence that challenged everything the luminary understood about strategic interaction. As the hearing continued, something fundamental was shifting. The luminary were not just reviewing a rescue mission. They were witnessing a potential transformation of their understanding of intelligent species, technological adaptation, and the nature of collaborative survival. Zarel looked at Marcus, realizing they were part of a moment that would be documented in galactic archives for generations to come. The Senate chamber continued to pulse with holographic data, a living testament to an encounter that would reshape diplomatic understanding. The diplomatic reception hall shimmered with an otherworldly light, its crystalline walls reflecting the complex interactions of multiple galactic species. Marcus Rodriguez stood at the center of a gathering that would have been impossible mere cycles ago. Luminary diplomats, scientific researchers, and representatives from nearby star systems, all converging with a singular focus of understanding. Zarel moved through the crowd, her role transformed from a simple researcher to a cultural bridge. Her scientific documentation had become more than an academic report. It was now a foundational text explaining human complexity to an entire galactic community. "Tell us about your ethical principles," requested the diplomatic representative from the Nexus Concordance, a multi-species governance network that had long viewed humans with cautious uncertainty. Marcus's response was neither rehearsed nor defensive. "We believe in protecting those who cannot protect themselves," he explained, his words carrying a depth that transcended simple translation. "Our strength is not about conquest. It's about collective survival." The hall fell into a contemplative silence. Galactic diplomatic circles had always viewed humanity as a potentially volatile species, technologically advancing, territorially ambitious. Marcus was systematically dismantling those perceptions with each carefully chosen word. Holographic displays began to show moments from human history. Not the typical military conquests or technological achievements, but images of humanitarian efforts, rescue missions in extreme environments, scientific collaborations that transcended immediate national or species interests. A senior luminary researcher approached, her translucent skin shifting through complex color patterns that suggested deep intellectual engagement. "Your species has experienced significant internal conflicts. How do you transform those challenges into collaborative potential?" Marcus smiled, a gesture that carried more complexity than a simple facial expression. "We understand that our differences are not weaknesses. They are opportunities for growth." The diplomatic reception became more than a formal gathering. It was a living laboratory of cross-species understanding. Each conversation peeled back layers of misunderstanding, revealing a more nuanced perspective of human potential. Zorail's research instruments continued to capture every moment. She was documenting not just words, but the subtle interactions, the micro-expressions, the complex dance of cultural exchange. Representatives from 3 different star systems found themselves engaged in conversations that challenged their fundamental understanding of intelligent species interaction. Marcus moved between these groups, not as a military operative, but as a living demonstration of human philosophical approach. Protection is not about domination, he explained to a group of skeptical diplomatic analysts. It's about creating environments where collective potential can emerge. The reception hall began to pulse with a different energy. What had begun as a formal diplomatic assessment was transforming into a genuine moment of potential galactic understanding. A communication specialist from the Quantum Diplomatic Corps approached Marcus. "Your intervention with the Luminary research vessel," she began. "It wasn't a typical military response. What guided your decision?" Marcus's response was immediate and profound. "Every life has potential. Our job is not to eliminate threats, but to create environments where that potential can emerge." The words carried a philosophical weight that transcended simple translation. These were not just statements about a specific rescue mission. They were fundamental principles of existence. Zorail watched the interactions with scientific precision. She was witnessing something remarkable, a species that viewed challenges not as obstacles, but as opportunities for collaborative transformation. The diplomatic representatives began to see beyond the initial rescue mission. This was about something far more significant, a potentially revolutionary approach to interspecies interaction. "We are not perfect," Marcus continued, addressing the growing crowd. "We are a species of continuous learning. Our strength is our ability to adapt, to understand, to grow." The reception hall seemed to breathe with a new understanding. Diplomatic barriers that had existed for generations began to show subtle cracks. Humanity was no longer just another species to be categorized and contained. They were a dynamic, complex civilization with a profound approach to collective survival. As the evening progressed, something fundamental was shifting in galactic diplomatic understanding. A rescue mission had transformed into a potential moment of species-wide revelation. Zorail looked at Marcus, realizing they were part of a moment that would be documented in diplomatic archives for generations to come. The crystalline walls of the reception hall continued to shimmer, a living testament to a potentially transformative moment of galactic understanding. The research station orbited a distant nebula, its crystalline structure a testament to luminary scientific achievement. Marcus Rodriguez stood at the primary observation deck, his presence now a familiar sight among the once apprehensive research team. Zorail approached, her movements carrying a newfound confidence that spoke of profound transformation. "Your assignment with the diplomatic corps is unusual," she observed, her translator rendering the words with a mix of professional curiosity and personal understanding. Marcus gazed out at the swirling cosmic phenomena. The nebula shifted through complex color patterns, a living metaphor for the journey that had brought him here. "Unusual is often where the most interesting discoveries happen," he replied. The research station hummed with a new energy. Since the rescue mission, everything had changed. The Luminary had not just accepted human involvement. They had begun to actively seek collaborative opportunities that would have been unimaginable cycles earlier. A holographic display materialized, showing multiple ongoing research projects. Where once these would have been strictly luminary endeavors, now they represented collaborative efforts spanning multiple species. Marcus's rescue mission had become more than a singular event. It was a catalyst for a fundamental shift in galactic interaction. "We're preparing a joint expedition to the Quantum Rift," Zorail explained, highlighting a complex research trajectory that merged luminary theoretical approaches with human adaptive methodologies. "Your insights have transformed our entire approach to exploratory research." The transformation was profound. The Luminary had always been brilliant theoretical researchers, their scientific approach defined by precise, calculated understanding. Humans brought something different, a willingness to transform theory into practical application, to see challenges as opportunities for creative solution. Diplomatic reports continued to stream in from across multiple star systems. The rescue mission had become a pivotal moment in galactic understanding. Where humans had once been viewed with suspicion, they were now seen as potential partners in complex problem-solving. It was never about being a hero, Marcus explained to a group of junior researchers who had gathered around him. It was about recognizing our shared potential. The research station's primary laboratory had been redesigned to reflect this new collaborative approach. Luminary scientific equipment now sat alongside human-developed technology, each system modified to work in harmony with the other. It was a physical demonstration of the philosophical shift that had occurred. Zaral's research had become a foundational text in cross-species communication. Her documentation of the rescue mission, of Marcus's approach to problem-solving, was now required study across multiple diplomatic and scientific institutions. We're developing a new framework of understanding, she explained to a group of incoming researchers. Not just about technology, but about the fundamental approach to challenges and collective survival. Marcus moved through the research station with a sense of purpose that went beyond his original military training. He was no longer just a rescue operative. He had become a living bridge between different approaches to understanding existence. The quantum research project took center stage. Where luminary scientists would have previously approached the complex phenomenon with pure theoretical models, they now integrated human adaptive methodologies. Each challenge became an opportunity for collaborative solution. Diplomatic reports continued to arrive. The rescue mission had sparked a fundamental revaluation of how different species could interact. Humanity was no longer seen as a potentially volatile species, but as a dynamic civilization with a unique approach to collective problem-solving. Our strength is our ability to adapt, Marcus would explain to various research teams. Not just technologically, but philosophically. We see potential where others see obstacles. The research station became a living testament to this new approach. Luminary researchers who had once been skeptical now actively sought human collaboration. Each project became an opportunity to merge different approaches, to see challenges from multiple perspectives. Zaral looked at Marcus, realizing they represented something more than a successful rescue mission. They were demonstrating a new way of understanding existence itself. The nebula outside continued to shift and change, a cosmic metaphor for the ongoing transformation of galactic understanding. As the research station continued its orbital trajectory, it carried with it the promise of a future defined not by limitations, but by the collective potential of different species working together. The universe watched, waiting to see what would emerge from this unexpected collaboration.